Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here in a few minutes, but while we are waiting, if you don't mind sharing in the chat your name and pronouns, it'd be great to know where you're located. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes, but would love for those that are able to be able to use the chat function and share your name and where you're located, and if you're a part of any organization or not. That'd be great. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here in a bit. We're still letting a few people join. And if you don't mind using the chat function and sharing your name, where you're located, and if you're a part of an organization or not, we'd be really appreciative of that. Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon to talk about the upcoming 2025 legislative agenda for the ACLU. My name is Tamaya Cox-Turay, and I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Oklahoma. And I'm really excited that you are all here joining us in what we know will be a long session as we move forward into policy. I just think it's really important that we level set and really name the moment we are in. We are seeing tremendous attacks around civil liberties, both at the federal level, but we know we're going to see that happen again at the local level as well. But please rest assured that the ACLU of Oklahoma, along with our partners from across the state, will be doing everything we can to mitigate and stop as many of the bad bills that are headed our way. One thing I'm always excited about being part of a multi-issue organization is that while, yes, we have bills that we're going to be fighting back and pushing against on really important issues, we also have issues that we are supporting and issues that and policy that we know are going to move Oklahoma forward. And that is collectively what I hope that we will be able to work together on those bills that we truly believe are protecting or expanding civil liberties to move forward. So with that, as you will see as we go through the rest of our webinar today, is that we know that collectively and together is how we move forward. So we want to ensure that you have the tools that you need to ensure that you're following the session. And one way you can follow what's happening is to follow our tracker. So this QR code, along with the link that is currently in the chat, will be one way that you can follow us through. So please follow us, and we do a very great job of updating our best in real time the legislation that we're following to ensure that, again, that the community is aware. So either clicking on the bill tracker or using the QR code will be your best way to follow along. With that, our next slide. One of the things, in a time that's as tumultuous as it is, we also believe in finding the joy and celebrating where we can. So before we even move forward, we do want to invite you all to join us on May 17th at our Liberty Gala. We were hoping that we would celebrate, last year was our 60th anniversary, 60 years of protecting civil liberties in our state, and we wanted to commemorate that time with the gala. I had some high hopes that we could potentially pull this off the week after the election, but it came very close, or it came very honest from staff, as well as recognizing the moment we were in, that we needed to postpone it. So please join us on May 17th with our special guest, Kamau Bell, W. Kamau Bell, as we talk about civil liberties in the state of Oklahoma. So we hope that you will be able to join us, and ticket sales, again, through the QR code, as well as the link in the chat. We also want to make sure that we are available to you with any questions that you may have during the session. So please utilize the chat function as well as a Q&A function in this webinar to be able to answer questions. We will have time for questions toward the end of this webinar, but please feel free to ask your questions either using the Q&A or chat function as we go through. One of the things, just because of the nature of the work, we want to make sure that we're keeping the questions to our policy agenda. But if you do have questions outside of that, we'll be able to probably answer them at a later time. But again, we know that we are at our best when we are taking in questions from the community. And so please feel free to utilize that function. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our policy director, Cindy Nguyen. Cindy has been doing amazing work these last couple of years to ensure that we are having a presence at the Capitol. So that's ensuring that we are creating relationships with policymakers, as well as providing them with information in a timely manner about why bills are good or bad. So she's a team of 1.5. But she's doing this great work to ensure that civil liberties are at the forefront of the conversations that are happening under the dome. So with that, I will like to bring up Cindy Nguyen.
Thank you so much, Tamaya. Hi, everybody. As Tamaya said, my name is Cindy Wynn. My pronouns are she, hers, and I get the distinct pleasure of serving as the policy director for the Oklahoma affiliate of the ACLU. So as you can see right there, those are our priority issues for the 2025 legislative session. Over 3,100 bills were filed, with many of them still attacking our civil rights and our liberties. And we are tracking about 300 of those bills. If you have been following legislative session long enough, you know that many of these attacks are not new, that they are often recycled, and much of the language comes from national organizations such as the Alliance Defending Freedom and the Heritage Foundation, which are both behind Project 2025. So not every single bill that we track is going to be discussed during our legislative preview today. There simply isn't enough time in the world to go over each and every single bill. But what you can do is look at our legislative tracker and use that QR code right in the corner there to see what type of bills that we are tracking and in which categories. So you may have seen a lot of really eye-catching or headlining bills before session has even begun. But something really important to note is that only 11 to 15% of bills actually make it all the way to the governor's desk and actually become law. So many of these headlining grabbing bills before session even starts won't make it very far into session. And there are several stops along the way before bills become law. So a quick 2025 legislative landscape. The 2025 legislative landscape is going to look quite different this year just because there is entirely new leadership in both chambers in the House as well as the Senate. It is going to be nearly impossible to even predict what is going to happen in the 2025 legislative session. Not only this, but we are seeing some major shakeups, especially on the House side when it comes to committees and the appointments. Not only will House bills have to go through one committee, all of them will now have to go through two committees. So the first committee, as well as the oversight committee, just to make it to the floor. And as you all know, Oklahoma continues to be a Republican trifecta state, meaning that both chambers, the office of the governor, as well as the AG, are all Republican. There are two vacancies in the House right now, with Representative Swope in Tulsa and Representative Van Kuren in Owasso resigning in January. And on the Senate side, Senator Roger Thompson's seat will be up for re-election, I believe, in May. As you can see, both the speaker and the pro tem are the bill keepers. These are the people that you should know. They are the ones that have all the power, much of the power, to decide which bills actually get to be heard on the floor. And of course, if you look at the session deadlines right there on your right, you can see that session starts next Monday and ends right until the end, runs right until the end of May. So let's start with some of the good news, our proactive bills that we are proud to introduce with legislators. The first one is our Failure to Protect Bill, SB 594 by Senator Rader. If you are unaware of what failure to protect means in our state, failure to protect was written to protect children and encourage survivors of domestic violence to leave these abusive relationships and protect their children. But we saw that it had the complete opposite effect. It set the expectation that mothers are all knowing of what every caretaker does with their children, even if the mothers themselves are facing domestic violence. If they do report the violence that they are facing or that their children are facing, people will often ask them why they didn't leave sooner or why they didn't report sooner. And mothers are often charged with failing to protect their children. So we often see that even if they don't do the reporting, oftentimes they are, even if they don't report because they didn't know the abuse happened, people will ask them again why they didn't leave sooner, and prosecutors will continue to charge them with things like fail to protect and ask them or say that they should have known everything that was going on in their household in the first place. And we see in our own data analysis from 2009 to 2018, 93% of the people being charged and convicted under failure to protect have been women in our state. And 1 in 4 women have been convicted of failing to protect their children. One in 4 women that have been convicted of failure of protecting their children have received a much longer sentence than the actual abusers themselves. So as it is written, what SB 594 will do is it will reduce a lifetime sentence of failure to protect down to 4 to 10 years, depending on the severity of the case. It will also provide an affirmative defense for domestic violence survivors if they felt like they were in fear for their life if they reported. It will also be retroactive for all of the women that are currently serving time under failure to protect. And of course, once again, we will be reintroducing our death penalty moratorium bill, SB 601 by Senator Rader as well. Last year, our moratorium bill passed committee, but it never made it to the floor. As the ACLU, we have the firm stance that capital punishment is racist, error-prone, as well as cruel. Since 2023, 11 people have been exonerated in our state from death row. And it's about time we put a pause on the executions to really re-examine if we trust the state of Oklahoma to continue and carry out these executions. Our next one is our felony murder, HB 1314 by Representative Danny Williams. Under current felony murder law in our state, individuals can be convicted of murder and sentenced to death for somebody else's actions, even if they did not intend for those actions to occur. Our bill is going to prohibit the use of the death penalty in cases of felony murder. And lastly, our largest bill, we have 2 bills, HB 1706 and SB 967, our pretrial justice work bill. So it will set the process for bail, require timely, meaningful, individualized hearings, and develop a statewide pretrial services program. There will also be sections in the bill that will speed up preliminary hearings, and all of these recommendations in our pretrial justice bill came from the governor's criminal justice task force themselves. So those are some of the bills that we're really excited to support and introduce during the 2025 legislative session. Now, if you have been following the legislative session long enough, you know there is usually some other bills that come along with our proactive work. On the other side, in addition to advocating for our own bills, we often have to play the defense because the sheer amount of bills attacking our civil liberties and rights. So the first one in our criminal legal reform priority area are automatic license plate readers. License plate readers are sold by Flock Safety. They are currently being used by about 50 law enforcement agencies across the entire state of Oklahoma. License plate readers, which all the information is sent to Flock Safety, are not well regulated as well as dangerous. It gives Flock access to all of the data retained by these cameras to not only local and state agencies, but also federal agencies. So everybody from a small town sheriff or your local law enforcement officers, all the way to federal agencies have access to where we are going, where we go to church, which medical provider we see, and they have access to all of this information. So currently under Oklahoma statute, these license plate readers are only supposed to be used in cases of checking if somebody has car insurance. But we are continuing to see law enforcement agencies and the government use these license plate readers outside of what is available or what they are supposed to be used for in our own Oklahoma statutes. We have also seen ODOT, or the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, requests that many cities remove these license plate readers on state right-of-ways. However, we see in those 2 bills right there, SB 857 and House Bill 1626, would allow for the use and expansion of automatic license plate readers on state right-of-ways. We also see continued rollbacks on State Question 780. If you are not familiar with State Question 780, it was a state question that reclassified classified some property and drug crimes from felonies down to misdemeanors. And it lowered or raised the felony larceny limit from $500 to $1,000, meaning that you had to steal at least $1,000 to be charged with that felony. But we continue to see rollbacks in State Question 780 every single session since it has passed. And both of those bills right there would lower the felony larceny limit back down to $500, meaning you only have to steal $500 to be charged with a felony and forever change your life. We also see really disturbing bills that limit the already lacking of police accountability in our state. So SB 637, deadly force will not be subject to criminal or civil prosecution unless the force is determined to be unlawful, meaning that police officers will not be charged criminally or face civil action unless that deadly force is already determined to be unlawful. We also see with SB 657 saying that it allows for the findings for unjustified deadly force to be appealed during the pretrial hearings, as well as HB 1593 that allows for police officers to dispute reports or any disputes of misconduct. And you have probably been watching a lot of news in Oklahoma, and you know that a lot of things have been happening in the news to many communities. And we know that many of these bills are going to impact the most marginalized of communities. Continuing with the criminal legal reform bills, there are even more attacks on the JNC, or the Judicial Nominating Commission. So the JNC was created to review and recommend judges for appointment and has been proven to be one of the best in the country because it was supposed to be it continues to be a nonpartisan body. Members can't even hold elected office or public office or positions of leadership in political parties until 5 years after their term. But we continue to see attacks on the JNC because there are some folks that are angry about some of the decisions that are being made, especially by the Oklahoma Supreme Court. Currently, right now, there are 15 people who serve on the JNC, with about 6 of them being appointed by the governor, but no more than 3 of the 6 people can be of the same party. Again, it is supposed to be nonpartisan for a reason. But we see with many of these bills, right, under Judicial Nominating Commission, that they are wanting to repeal the JNC and give that power to the governor and allow the governor to hand select our judges. Some of them also mandate that judges retire at 75 years old. And we see with SJR 13 that it removes the political party membership requirements, meaning that the JNC no longer has to be nonpartisan, that many people of the same political party can be appointed to the JNC. You also see the unorganized state militia in the news, SB 852. It creates the Oklahoma State Guard, which is different from the National Guard. So while the Oklahoma National Guard can be called into service by the president or the governor, a state guard like this one will only be answerable to or controlled by the governor themselves. And you probably also saw the anti-houseless bills. SB 484 was the one that I would say made the most news before session. This one would prohibit cities with a population under 300,000 from operating shelters or providing services. And even in the definition of, quote, what the bill says, who is a homeless person, it includes people who are fleeing violence in the state as well. So we are already seeing incredibly cruel bills being introduced before session has started. Moving on to our immigrant rights work, there are over 20 bills this legislative session attacking our immigrant and refugee communities in Oklahoma. Many of these, at least 3 of them, are attacking immigrant students and their right to learn. These bills, those 3 bills you see at the top right there, in addition to the proposed rules by the Oklahoma State Department of Education, which was just approved today by the Department of Education, will discourage students students from being able to enroll in public schools because they are in fear, and is written to target our immigrant and refugee communities. We know that both the Oklahoma Constitution as well as the Supreme Court have affirmed the right of immigrant students and their right to learn in our public schools, and that the ACLU is prepared to defend and support students regardless of which bill passes or what gets passed at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. When it comes to deportation, there are quite a few bills. We see with HB 1932, it creates the Donald Trump Mass Deportation Revolving Fund, as well as HB 1312 and HB 1362. Many of these bills that target deportation often have to do with the criminal history of the person or criminal laws that the person had violated. So for example, HB 1312, if you are violating any criminal law, you will face life in prison or deportation, as well as HB 1362. If you are found to be violating any criminal law, you face not only the punishment for violating that law, but also a 5-year addition to that just for being undocumented in Oklahoma. And lastly, HB 1307, it charges if somebody commits first-degree murder while being undocumented in the state of Oklahoma, that person shall be punished by the death penalty. Continuing with immigrant attacks, we are also seeing attacks on driver's license. So HB 1043, it invalidates any special driver's license that are issued exclusively to undocumented immigrants out of state. Please note that I said exclusively issued to undocumented immigrants out of state, and not just any driver's license. So in our own findings, Delaware and Connecticut are currently the only states that issue these special driver's licenses. It's exclusively for undocumented immigrants. But at the most, there are other 17 other states, including DC, that issues licenses in general to undocumented immigrants. But this bill seems to only be targeting the states that exclusively give driver's licenses, these special driver's licenses, to undocumented immigrants. But there are good bills, as you see in green. SB 399 will allow anybody with a tax ID number to gain a driver's license, which makes the roads safer for everybody that is driving on our roads. We also see continued attacks on employment for our undocumented communities. Employers must register and verify all workers that are undocumented with SB 655 as well as HB 1962. And as well, we continue to see attacks on cities that pass sanctuary city ordinances, with all 3 of those bills down below. Moving on to reproductive freedom. Right now, there are about 15 bills overall attacking reproductive freedom, with 8 of those bills attacking abortion directly in a state that has completely banned abortion. So you can see those top 2 bills right there, SB 456 as well as SB 884, allows for the charging of first-degree murder, both for the abortion patient as well as for the providers providing the abortion. And you see those about 4 bills in the second row right there. It continues to ban access or attempts to ban access to abortion pills or abortion medication, also known as mifepristone, as well as misoprostol, whether it's through trafficking or in the mail. We also see with HB 1724, it will clarify these abortion pills as a Schedule 4 drug. Also, drugs that are also in the category are Xanax, Valium, or Ambien. And we saw that law pass in Louisiana already, which just makes it much harder for abortion patients that need these abortion pills to be able to obtain them in this state. We also see anti-abortion attacks reach our public schools. Anti-abortion videos known as the quote, Baby Olivia video must be shown in school curriculums with those 2 bills right there. We also see bills attacking marriage. You probably have seen the recent news about the covenant marriages, or SB 228, the Covenant Marriage Act. If passed in Oklahoma, we would be the fourth state in the nation to offer what is known as a covenant marriage. This is supposed to curb the divorce rates and is a lifelong covenant before God. All you have to do to get into a covenant marriage is sign a declaration of intent and receive premarital counseling. But the counselor does not have to be a licensed professional. It can be a minister, a clergy member, or just some person that calls them a counselor. And the only way that somebody would be able to get a divorce in a covenant marriage, it would only be granted if the spouse can prove abandonment for at least 1 year, or abuse, or adultery with evidence. And covenant marriages do provide tax benefits for children that are born in wedlock to encourage those types of marriages. So we are seeing a tax on no-fault divorce in our state. But we do see good bills. In green right there, you are seeing the ban on child marriages, which is great to see, but very worrying that we are continuing to have to address this in the year 2025. So we do see bans on child marriages, those three bills right there, and great bills when it comes to access to reproductive health. SB 176 allows people to pick up a 3-month or years-long supply of contraception at their pharmacy, which is incredible for many folks that are living in rural places in Oklahoma. And SB 219, which allows period products to be placed in schools. Moving on to attacks on our 2S LGBTQ plus community members. Right now, we are sitting at about 25 bills that directly attack our 2S LGBTQ plus neighbors. And when it comes to healthcare, there continues to be attacks on best practice medical care, otherwise known as gender affirming care, both for trans and adult trans Oklahomans. So SB 1002 and SB 1049 bans access to best medical care for trans Oklahomans. One of them bans access to gender affirming care for minors, which I do not know if the person who wrote this bill realizes that that bill did pass last year, as well as a ban on the use of public funds for gender affirming care for all Oklahomans. We are also seeing HB 2149. It extends the statute of limitations. The typical statute of limitations for medical providers is about 2 years. This would extend it all the way to 20 years for medical practitioners that practice gender affirming care. And we also see one of the most concerning bills I have seen last session and this session is the outright ability to deny healthcare if you are a medical provider or simply a receptionist sitting in the medical office, or you are an insurance provider and you are able to deny healthcare based on conscience alone. So last year, the exact same bill was introduced by the Alliance Defending Freedom last legislative session, but it ended up in a tie vote in committee. However, as usual, we see the Alliance Defending Freedom continue their attacks and introduce not one, but 3 bills this time around. We also continue to see bans on drag shows as well as story hour with those 3 bills right there. And once again, like I said at the very beginning, none of these bills are new. They're oftentimes recycled, and the language comes from national organizations, such as all these bans on Pride Month and activities for state agencies. So HB 1219 prohibits state entities from being able to use state funds to promote or participate in Pride Month or related activities, and pride flags cannot be displayed on any state grounds. Continuing with the attacks, there are many attacks on schools or public schools as well. So those three bills at the top is it will require public schools and higher education employees to only use the legal name and pronouns of students. With censorship, child care facilities may not have content pertaining to the gender identity or sexual orientation of the children or anybody. Again, more attacks on birth certificates and being able to update the gender on one's birth certificates in HB 1225. And we continue to see the exact same bill being brought forth from last session, the Adoption Foster Bill. SB 658 would prohibit DHS from requiring potential foster or adoptive parents to be affirming of a foster child or potential child that they would like to adopt. So this allows things such as if that foster parent believes in things like conversion therapy or does not want to affirm the child's sexual orientation or gender identity, this would not disqualify them for being able to foster or adopt that already vulnerable child. Continuing with class censorships, there are over 10 bills attacking free speech in our classrooms and libraries. Again, continued attacks with DEI, even after the governor's executive order. We are seeing about 5 bills right there that would ban DEI in higher education, as well as state agencies. With higher education, you may have also seen this one in the news. It establishes the School of American Civic Thought at the University of Oklahoma, and it promotes particular content about American history. I wonder what the particular content is. And continuing with book bans, this is not a surprise for anybody. If many of these book ban legislative bills fail, we often see them reiterated or repeated in school district or school board meetings. So with SB 19, it prohibits school libraries from having and maintaining certain materials. Every single year, public schools must submit a complete list of the books that they have to the Oklahoma State Department of Education. Down there, we see SB 348 as well as HB 1285. It prohibits certain educational materials and allows many parents to review and reject many materials, which is already the case in many school districts. However, this type of bill, also known as the Parents' Bill of Rights, would give even more allowances to parents to be able to completely reject things that our students are learning, such as books or the type of curriculum that is going to be in their schools. And with religious freedom, it would not be Oklahoma with several attacks on religious freedom. There are over 10 bills introduced this legislative session alone attacking everybody's right to religious freedom. HB 1226, you probably saw the news recently this week. SCOTUS has confirmed that they will be hearing the case of the religious charter school in Oklahoma. What HB 1226 would do is allow for religious charter schools. With SB 486, 590, as well as HB 1232, it would allow for the appointment of school chaplains, whether this is an employee that the schools hire or just a volunteer to come into the schools to counsel students. We know that this puts many to us LGBTQ plus students, undocumented students that could be at risk if chaplains are not fully trained in being able to counsel students. We know that many school counselors have to receive many degrees to even be able to step foot into a school and call themselves a school counselor. But what those those 3 bills would be able to do is allow anybody to come into the schools who claim themselves as a chaplain to be able to talk to the students. And with those bills at the bottom, we see even more attacks on religious freedom in public education, such as having the Bible and the 10 Commandments in the curriculum. sounds familiar from what the Oklahoma State Department of Education would like to do, as well as bills such as placing 10 Commandment posters in each and every single classroom, which again, I believe passed in Louisiana, and another one that were placed "In God We Trust" mottos in each and every classroom. We are also seeing a new attack on rollbacks on State Question 790. State Question 790 passed to say that public funds cannot be used for religious purposes, except if SGR 4 became a state question and passed. It will create a state question for state funds to be able to be used indirectly for religious purposes. And 10 Commandments at the state capitol. Every single year, we see the same bill, SB 380. It requires a monument at the Capitol, or a 10 Commandments monument at the Capitol. Again, every single year, we see attacks on the initiative petition process. Right now, we are tracking about over 20 bills that attack the voting and election process in Oklahoma, with many of these bills coming directly from Project 2025. So SB 968 and SB 116, no more than 25% or 5% of signatures from an initiative petition can come from one county. SB 1027, no state question can contain words or phrases that attempt to deceive voters. I'm excited to see what that bill actually means when it says that. SB 1119, signature collectors must be registered voters and clarify if they are the ones being paid. And lastly, those two bills down there, or those two joint resolutions down there, creates a state question to increase the percentage needed to pass a ballot measure to 60%. You probably recognize this from Florida. Florida attempted to pass an abortion ballot and did gain the majority, but they did not reach that 60% threshold that is needed to pass the abortion ballot. We know one of the only ways that Oklahomans directly get to have their voices heard is through the initiative petition process. We've gained things such as medical marijuana, criminal legal reform, as well as Medicaid expansion through things such as signature gathering and the initiative petition process, which is why we continue to see attacks every single session. Moving on with, continuing with voting on elections, again, 20 bills attacking voting and election process, some of them attacking voter IDs. So HB 1005 would create and require a statewide voter photo ID card. And HB 1007, which directly came from Project 2025, it says that university IDs or school IDs will not be valid to be able to vote in the state of Oklahoma. And with elections, prohibits ranked choice voting. We already passed that last session, as well as SB 834. It prohibits open primaries. But that is never the end. We see a lot of bills this session coming from legislators that are protecting the right to vote and access to the ballot. Things such as automatic voter registration, increasing the amount of early days somebody can vote, creating a state holiday for general elections so more people have time to be able to go and vote and exercise their right to vote. And those last three that we see down there, it provides a deadline to place the initiative petition on the ballot. If you've been paying attention to the news, you know our governor set an initiative petition, I believe, all the way in 2026, even though they gained enough signatures all the way from last year. So those three bills that you are seeing, it will provide and force the governor to place the initiative petition that has gained enough signatures and had the voice of Oklahomans that signed those petitions to place those bills on a certain election. So those are most of the bills that we are watching right now. And I will hand it over to Tamaya to field any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And I think I cannot see folks, but if we could just take a collective breath. We always try to figure out what's the best balance of how do we share the bills? Do we start with the good ones first or the bad ones, or kind of mix it in? I have to name, I recognize it is a lot. And keeping in mind that those are just the bills that the ACLU is following. But I do think it's really important, as Cindy said in the beginning, that these are bills that are simply introduced. Session has not started. And therefore, while we know a lot of these bills won't necessarily make it to the finish line, that doesn't take away from the anxiety that many people see from the bills that have been introduced. And it doesn't take away from the potential harm, right? The unintended consequences. We know that not everyone understands the process of our legislature, and therefore when someone says a bill is introduced, it is important, and I think it's our job to tell people that that simply means it's introduced, it is not law. So with that, I want to make sure that we are able to answer questions that you may have. So again, please consider using the chat function or the Q&A function of the webinar for any questions. So Cindy, we do have one question. We have a couple of questions, but that first question is around covenant marriages. So how likely are we to see the repeal of no-fault divorce, like we've seen proposed, unfortunately, a few times in these last sessions?
Great question. That bill is by Senator Devers, and he has yet to pass a bill, any of his bills last session. I always say we never expect the unexpected. So we're never really sure of how bills are going to look or a session is going to look this session, just because of the amount of changes in leadership. So I know it's not the answer that you would like, but to be realistic is that we're not really sure which bills are going to pass, but to note that Senator Devers has yet to pass a bill since he's been elected into office last session.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. You know, one question that is kind of coming up, and it's unfortunate, we're kind of in this position of we see the writing on the wall in some areas. And the next question is, it feels like there's no going back from school choice in Oklahoma. Are you aware of any bill that puts similar accountability requirements on private schools of receiving state funds?
I am not aware for this session, but please, anybody jump into the chat if they are aware of those bills. I saw some bills from last session, and I wasn't sure if they were going to be carried over in the same session.
And I think that's such a great point that we are continuing trying to highlight, is that while we are seeing, even right now, we know it's school choice week and the Oklahoma State Department of Education is uplifting that work, we are not seeing the accountability mechanisms of what it means to receive state funds from private schools and what will be in place. And we know that private schools obviously don't have the same requirement when it comes to students with an IEP per se, or when it comes to civil rights requirements. And therefore, it is essential that we monitor if state funding at some point is allowed to go into state schools. What does that going to look like for marginalized students? We have a great question that actually may lead, if we don't have any more other questions, that may lead to our next slide. But does the ACLU have scheduled days for people to go to the state capitol? One of the things I just real quickly before I probably will turn this back over to our Nicole, our organizer. And Nicole, if you actually want to start coming on screen, that would be great. I think it's really important that we continue to be as vigilant as possible at the state capitol. And I do recognize, and I want to recognize the privilege that happens by working for the ACLU, is that we are able to have a presence at the Capitol every day, and we will continue to do that. However, we also know that not everyone is able to do that. So we will talk about the days that we will have what we call our advocacy days at the Capitol. But one commitment that we can make to you all as community members is that if we are aware of our partner organizations having days at the Capitol, we want to make sure that we will make sure that we are uplifting those days as well. We know that it's collective work that allows us to move forward, and that will be really important. And Nicole, I apologize. We did have another question come in. Cindy, regarding the last slide, what are the 3 petitions that have received enough signatures but have yet to been placed on a ballot? And I believe, and Cindy, jump in if I'm wrong, we know of only one signature or one initiative petition that received enough signatures, and that is around the increase of the minimum wage that received enough signatures last year. But unfortunately, due to the antics of our governor, has not placed it on a ballot until I believe 2026. That is the only state question that we're aware of that is that will be on the ballot eventually. Cindy, did I misrepresent that at all?
No, I think they may be thinking of the deadline bills that would there are 3 bills that would force initiative petitions to be placed on a certain deadline if they have enough signatures.
Correct. We do have a question around abortion. Do the first-degree murder charges for abortion apply to abortions procured out of state or in state only? And I feel very confident in saying that is in state only. We know that there are very limited circumstances. In fact, it's just not happening in Oklahoma where an abortion is allowed, even in a medical emergency, which is the only type of abortion that's allowed in Oklahoma. But that first-degree murder charge would go to providers or people that obtain abortions only in state only. However, I think we are all monitoring very closely because we know there are attempts to criminalize those that are receiving abortions out of state. Thankfully, we have not seen enough language on what that could look like, but we know that that is a national trend that is happening, i.e. In Texas, where their attorney general is attempting to go after a provider in the East Coast that performed an abortion on a Texan. So as of this point, there are no additional questions. So I am going to pass it over to our amazing organizer, Nicole. And Nicole, if you don't mind introducing yourself, this is your first legislative preview with us. So please tell everyone who you are and what you do for the ACLU.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Nicole Maldonado, and like Tamaya said, I'm the new organizer manager for the ACLU of Oklahoma. I'm super excited to jump into this role, especially with all of the things that are coming up against us. Now more than ever, we have to, stay put on the ground and keep the fight going. So today, I just want to invite you all to join us at the Advocacy Day at the Capitol that is going to be on March 10 at 10 a.m. at the state capitol. So, as we saw all of the terrible bills, but also some of the good bills, if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you just don't know how to take action, this is the perfect opportunity for you to take action. So just join us on that day, come and participate. You have a really good chance to meet your legislator, your senator, your state representative, and just advocate for the things that you're really passionate about. You can go to our office and talk to them and just explain, why for you it's important for them to vote no or yes with the bill. I also want to invite you all to scan the QR code for our rapid response team. This is a really cool tool that we have, because every time that something big in the legislature happens, then you can receive text messages and then be updated about what's happening in the state legislature. And then you can, like I said, engage and advocate. So if you sign up with a QR code for the State Capitol Advocacy Day, and then to receive text alerts, that will be awesome. And just, we have to stay engaged, and we have to, speak up and use our voices. So yeah, and now I'm going to introduce Sarah Jane Del Monte. She's our development director, and she's going to talk about ways that you guys can support the ACLU.
Hello, all. As Nicole said, I'm Sarah Jane Del Monte. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the development director here. Thank you so much for being part of our preview today. Just like Nicole, this is my first one as well. And you've joined us today because you believe in fighting for equality and justice and defending civil rights. You are what drives us forward. Every one of you all is one of our constituents. And attending today also shows that you believe in the mission of the ACLU and you really want to be part of the work we do with the Oklahoma Legislature. So we do encourage you to sign up for those emails, monitor our bill tracker, even follow us on social media. You'll get some information that is rapid response through those ways as well. But many people don't know that the ACLU of Oklahoma is a membership organization. And part of the way we're supported by people who give money is the ones that to become members. And so being a member funds our work to lobby and to protect civil liberties. And we invite you to become a card-carrying member of the ACLU. I cannot tell you how many times someone has taken a picture of their card and proudly sent it to me. And I'd love for you to do the same. That the union where its membership is at is what funds our lobbying. We also have a foundation, and the foundation does not fund our lobbying, but what it does support is our research and the education that we do and litigation for the protection of civil liberties. If you go to our website, you can see a list of all the suits that we've filed right now. And so that's part of the way that the foundation is able to make that work possible. So as you've seen in this legislative preview, this session is going to be highly challenging, and your support is needed to ensure we protect the rights of Oklahomans. And honestly, our efforts are made possible through people power and folks like you. So I invite you to join our work by supporting us. The QR code on the screen will help get you started. And then Tamaya also mentioned that on Saturday, the 17th of May, we'll be commemorating 60 years in defense of civil liberties here at the Oklahoma, the ACLU of Oklahoma Liberty Gala. So there are sponsorships available if you are interested in being a sponsor. My email is on the screen. Please shoot me an email. One thing that we have that's really unique is that we have a nonprofit table. It's a very inexpensive way to attend. If you work at a nonprofit, you have to be a registered nonprofit, and that is a half a table for 4 tickets. Then we also have the regular tickets, and then there's VIP tickets that are called our ally ticket. But do know that sponsorships and ally tickets include access to our VIP reception, which means you'll meet Kamau Bell. If you haven't looked him up yet, he's really great. He is a socio-political comedian and activist, and he will be very much a great person to see that night. So many thanks for joining us in the fight to secure liberty, justice, equity for our state. We couldn't do our work without y'all. And then Maya, I think, we've got one more slide left. To you.
Thank you all. And my apologies, there were a few questions in the Q&A that I did miss. I believe they were answered. Regarding one of the bills, I think it's House Bill 2243, we're actually still monitoring that bill. So we are doing a more deep dive with that bill. And so what we do know with session is that bills that start one way and we have yet to analyze every bill, we will continue to do that. So please continue to circle back with us throughout session regarding some of the bills that you may be interested in. And then another question was around, would the DEI ban include private institutions like the University of Tulsa? To our knowledge, that will not be the case. It's around state funding. However, I think it's also important for me to name in the few minutes that we have is that we are talking about, state policy. We know that it's going to be local, municipal, local, and state government that will be able to push back against some of the federal policy that's coming down. But we also recognize we're in a state like Oklahoma. So local city councils, local school boards are going to play such an important backstop to ensuring that students receive the best education, that implementations around mass deportations or immigration will not be followed. So we, more than ever, will be also looking toward local and municipality policies in a way we probably haven't had to do in a very long time. Again, I can't emphasize enough that will be needed. We will be relying on communities to ensure that we are aware of what's happening. So that is my I guess, ask to you all is that by no means do we have all the answers, and we're only going to get there together if we can rely on one another. So the commitment that I have to you all is that while the ACLU may not have all the answers, we are always going to do our best to ensure that the community is aware, involved, protected as much as we possibly can. But we also recognize that we have to rely on our partners, individuals, and organizations to do that together. For those that have seen me speak for forever, know that I end most of our convenings with my favorite quote, which is by Alice Walker, which is "Activism is my right to live on this planet." And I truly, truly believe that. But I actually have to go further, and I have to go back and say that if we want, is the old African proverb that, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you want to go somewhere far, go together. And that is really what this is about today. That is what I think the theme of the session will be about togetherness. We're able to see some amazing organizing work happening at the Oklahoma State Department of Education outside today by a student-led rally. So we're asking communities to truly reach out to the ACLU. We want to be helpful where we can. We want to lift up voices where we can, but we want to ensure that it's about community care with us between now and the end of session. So with that, I do want to thank you so much for your time today. Please know you do have our contact information. If there is anything that you think the ACLU should be aware of, please consider our email address at intake@acluok.org. Again, that's intake@acluok.org. That's an opportunity to let you share with us what is happening in the communities that we may not be aware of. And most importantly, we just hope that if you see us at the Capitol, you can join us within our mission, as well as ensuring to invite us at places that you're having. Again, we believe that it's important that the community is aware of what's happening, and simply knowing their rights is one of the best resources that we can be. So with that, again, thank you so much for your time. Please be in contact and community with us, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.